Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Systematic Ecology and another episode of Comic Book Ketchup. I'm one of your hosts, Will Rose, and it's no secret that I love comic books. I love comics, graphic novels. It's one of my favorite mediums and way of storytelling. And so I'm excited for another episode of Comic Book Catch Up. This is going out live to our patrons, and we are very thankful for all those who support the show through Patreon and other means. We couldn't do this show without you. You help support us and keep us moving forward in the podcast game. We know that there is a lot of there are a lot of podcasts out there, a lot of choices that you can choose from to listen to, and we're just happy to be a part of that culture and a part of the podcast world. And at our last team meeting, Joshua shared with us that we have like thousands of downloads on each episode, and we have people from all over the world that listen to our show. And so you're helping us move forward by being a Patreon, and so thank you for what you do and supporting the show and sharing with your friends as we all geek out with one another. So here we are, another episode of Comic Book Catch Up. We have a line of comics that we're going to talk about, some new reboots that are coming out that we're excited about. And I can't do this alone. One of my favorite comic book friends and nerds and geeks, Dr. Andy Walsh. And as you can see from his background, he's a huge X-Men fan like me. We'll get to that in just a little bit because there's some good news, and it's a good time to be an X-Men fan these days for sure. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Well, thanks. Good to be talking to you again.
Yeah. Glad we can do comic book catch up. So I don't know if we've asked you this before. You've been on other comic book catch ups before, but if you had to choose one, like a favorite condiment out there today, it could change. We evolve from week to week, day to day. But if you had to today, at lunchtime, you had to pick your favorite condiment to put on your sandwich or hot dog or hamburger, what are you choosing?
These days, I've been into Taco Cat hot sauce. It is a small label hot sauce that my parents get me from the New York City area, and it's tasty. It's spicy, but not like just crazy spicy. It has a nice flavor, and it's fun because then I can put it on goat cheese pizza and have something that is Taco Cat goat cheese pizza, which, if you're not familiar with that card game, is a card game that my teenage daughter and her friends absolutely adore. So it's very fun that I was able to create that combination.
That's good. And what I've heard and seen on t-shirts is Taco Cat spelled backwards is still Taco Cat.
It is, quite conveniently.
It's a palindrome. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So is it pretty spicy? Like, what's the level of spiciness that's on this thing?
It's probably comparable. Like if you get the Frank's hot sauce, like that kind of level, not like ghost pepper. You're going to be sweating for an hour kind of level, but enough that you can tell that it's there too. It's not nothing.
There you go. Yeah, I've grown. I was a wimp in the past when it comes to like spicy foods, and then my wife loves it and will go super hot on anything. And I've grown to really love good hot sauces and spices and some zestiness there. And we're a fan of Hot Ones on YouTube, and watch that whenever a new episode drops. And the latest one with Conan O'Brien is one of the funniest things I've seen. If you haven't seen that out there and you like Hot Ones, you like somebody being a goofball on TV eating hot wings, that's for you. And I might have to look up Taco Cat hot sauce. I think I'm gonna have to find that. That's good. That's good. Well, talking about spicy things, let's get into the lightning round and really talk about something spicy going on. It is a great time to be an X-Men fan because we have X-Men 97. That is just all the reviews are saying this cartoon is great, and I love it. I love the storyline. I love the pace. It's getting to the heart and core of who the X-Men are and their struggle. And then we just had another trailer drop for Deadpool Wolverine. It was very heavily Wolverine focused on this one. It looks like it's going to be a comedy and a way to bring in X-Men. It's going to be rated R with a lot of cuss words, a lot of F-bombs. It's Disney being
Didn't we used
edgy.
To warn people about that on a trailer?
I know. It's like, hey, kids, gather around for your favorite superhero, Wolverine.
Oh, and then
they Oh no, don't do that. Don't show it to your elementary school kids. Okay. That's for sure. Yeah, there should be a little more, but it's Deadpool. So hopefully people know by now. It's pretty edgy and they're pushing the limits there. But yeah, so we have X-Men 97. We have Deadpool Wolverine. The X-Men comic book is coming. What's out there for the X-Men comics is they're coming the Fall of X and the Rise of X, and then they're doing another reboot this summer. There's going to be a whole string of new X-Men comics, some with familiar names with a new #1 at top. I'm sure they'll still use some legacy numbers, I hope. But we have some new books, new creative teams. And I want to talk with Andy a little bit about like what he's most looking forward to. So this summer, July, August, I'm going to read off some of the books and creative teams. And you tell me, Andy, what you're most looking forward to. So with the team books, we have X Factor and X Force. Not quite sure what the creative teams or who's on those teams just yet. But the kind of the main 3 team books, you have X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men with Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman as the creative team. And there you have Cyclops and Beast and Juggernaut and Magic is kind of their team and a few others. Then you have the Exceptional X-Men, which I don't think that adjective has been used out there. This is a new way to describe X-Men. Exceptional X-Men by Eve Ewing, and I can't pronounce. I don't know what the artist is. Maybe you do, Andy. But this is like Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost being on the same team or leading a school. They've had friction in the past and come together in this end of the Krakoa age, bonding over that. So maybe they're working together as a team. And then you have the flagship Uncanny X-Men with Gail Simone and David Marquez. And that's got some familiar faces like Nightcrawler and Rogue and Jubilee, Gambit, and Wolverine on that one. So there you go. Then you have a couple like character comics like Phoenix. You have Storm, you have Wolverine, and then another team book with some teenagers, NYX, Nyx, and that's going to be Miss Marvel's team there in New York City, hitting the ground, what it's like being a mutant in New York City. So there's 9 X books. I can't afford buying all 9, so I'm going to have to pick and choose. I'll probably grab the first issue just to kind of see what the creative team looks like and what they're doing, and if they can hook me. But out of this list, Andy, what are you most looking forward to or excited to pick up come this summer, end of the summer?
Yeah, so first, I think that artist on Exceptional X-Men is Carmen Carnero.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, the things that jump out at me, X-Men by Jed MacKay and Ryan Stegman. Those are creators who I've enjoyed on other books. I have really appreciated what Jed MacKay is doing with the Avengers lately. It's kind of got some big high concept sci-fi stuff, which is a nice ingredient I like in my X-Men books. So hopefully there'll be some of that. The Kitty Pryde or Kate Pryde and Emma Frost double act in Marauders and then all through the Krakoa era has been has been an enjoyable reading experience, an enjoyable pairing of characters that wasn't obvious. I mean, obviously they have history, but their relationship dynamic has deepened in this recent era. So hopefully that book, Exceptional X-Men, will be good. And then the X-Force lineup recently, it's being, which is an interesting, not a character usually. So yeah, there was a Cable and X-Force book that he was on a few years back. But okay. Yeah, not a traditional X-Force character, but he's somebody, as a sort of science tech character. I think he's got some interesting things to bring there. So yeah, those are the books that I think stood out most to me. Of course, I am a big fan of previous incarnations of X Factor. We don't know what they're going to put under this name this time around. So maybe watch this space for something that might be interesting to me or something that might not be. Who knows? But yeah, that's what I got so far from what's been announced.
Yeah, I would love to, for your sake, I hope they bring back Multiple Man. Maybe that'll happen. We'll see.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time in the Krakoa era, like waiting on tables and having large numbers of dupes killed, in security failures. So yeah, it'd be nice for him to get something a little bit more to do.
Yeah. I'm with you. I love Jed McKay and what he did. He's been with Adventures have been neat, but also Moon Knight. He's been writing Moon Knight and doing a lot of cool stuff with Moon Knight. So to see what he does with Cyclops and kind of bring it back to the heart of his character would be great. Exceptional X-Men, I'm curious about, and then Uncanny X-Men. Can't wait for that to see what Gail Simone. I really like her as a creative person and get into the heart of characters, a lot of character development, and so excited about that. And we'll see about the others. You know what's going to go. I'm curious to see who's going to be on the Wolverine team. I think since you have Deadpool, Wolverine being prominent in the movie and being pretty prominent in the X-Men 97, I think Wolverine's going to make a little bit of a comeback here. He's always been a popular character for a while there. In the early 2000s, he was on the cover of every single book. They could not have like promoted him more. We were tired of Wolverine by the time he got to 2010, and then he kind of dropped off, and they leaned into kind of the MCU characters. But now that they're kind of drawing him into the MCU, I'm curious how they're going to do with the book. So that creative team, who's writing it, who's drawing it, I know I have my hopes. There's one of my favorite artists who I've actually talked with on another podcast that we kind of chat on Instagram. He could be the artist on Wolverine, and I really hope that's the case. Don't want to break any news here on podcast, but I don't think Marvel's listening or this artist. So we'll what happens if I ruin it and he gets fired because I mentioned it on this podcast, then I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And then curious, since Storm had a prominent role on like the other planet, what's the other planet? Andy?
Morocco?
Yeah, like Mars, terraform Mars to be a mutant place, and that's no longer a thing or won't be. I'm curious how they're going to bring Storm to have her own book too, because she's pretty prominent in this X-Men 97 universe as well.
Yeah, looks like she's supposed to be engaging in politics in some way, running for Congress maybe, or mayor or something like that. I'm not sure I fully caught what was going on, but it looks like she's running for office or engaging in politics. That was hinted at in, was it Timeless? I think every once in a while they kind of tease future things with these, panels of stuff to come, and you don't really know what's going on there. I think that was in Timeless. There was a page of hinting at different X books, and she was at like a press conference, at a lectern for a press conference or something like that.
And that kind of make it. We're in a season of politics and elections, and we have our own primary political themed podcast going on and series. And so, sometimes if you have a lot of talking heads and a lot of politics in your comics, sometimes that can be like, oh boy, kind of a dredge, going through. But I think if it's done well, and her being a strong leader and a role model in world politics, I'll check it out. We'll see what happens. And speaking of Storm, with that ends our lightning round. I think I hear Storm in the distance. Yep, there she goes. All right, going off to be a mayor or governor or rule a nation. So let's get into the main comics for today. And so first one you chose this one. We'll go back and forth. We each chose two comics, and I have two, you have two. The first one, let's talk about Fantastic Four 15. They're hot right now too, because we just saw that Disney and Marvel released who their cast is for Fantastic Four for the movie, and it is just a star-studded cast. Cannot wait for this particular movie. And then I think they were trolling the trolls by releasing what gender the Silver Surfer is to get attention and to get clicks and to get people riled up a little bit. But that actress who's going to play Silver Surfer in Fantastic Four, I loved her on Ozark. I couldn't love her more as an actress. So her being in this movie, I love. But here, let's talk about the comic. Fantastic Four, we'll talk about another comic too, that they have these reboots and they have these numbers to get you to jump on, and a jumping on point, but it also has a legacy number. So I don't know what volume this is for Fantastic Four, but Fantastic Four 15, legacy number 708. I love those legacy numbers to let you know how long it's been a part of. Ryan North has been just fantastic on this book. Andy, why did you choose this one? What is about this creative team and this particular issue that jumped out for you?
Yeah, so I think since Unbeatable Squirrel Girl Ryan North, I may have said this on the show before. Ryan North is who I would like to be when I grow up. Just the way that he weaves in real science and makes stories educational, but also in a very entertaining and compelling way. That I'm just very impressed by what he's able to do there. I mean, there are issues of Squirrel Girl where you get a lesson on database design or different kinds of computer science algorithms and so forth. And he writes books and things, prose books as well as comics that also incorporate that. Yeah, so I'm just a big fan of what Ryan North has been doing in all media. And not the biggest Fantastic Four fan in the world, but partly because it feels like a lot of times they're just playing the hits over and over again.
Right.
But I appreciate what they've been doing on this version of the Fantastic Four, bringing a lot of fresh concepts. And every issue, just about every issue, is a standalone story with some kind of high concept sci-fi premise most of the time. And this issue was all about the idea of a sentient or sapient mind that is comprised of cell phone nodes, essentially. There's an app that people have on their cell phones, and they are, this huge network of people interacting with this app essentially creates a conscious mind from that collective activity. And it based on the opening page or two of the comic, it seems like it's based on an existing sort of thought experiment of what would happen if you gave everybody in China the ability to communicate, but communicate the way that individual nerve cells do, just sort of like passing on signals and amplifying them, or voting them down, so to speak. What would happen? How would that entity communicate? And so, so you get this sort of over the course of the concept, you get a concept comic, you get this awakening of this consciousness, and most of it is first-person narration from this entity's point of view. And it interacts with the Fantastic Four. It figures out a way to communicate with the Fantastic Four. They figure out a way to communicate back with it, and they develop a relationship. And it's just one of these very, very cool stories about like how do you interact with a consciousness that has a very different type of experience than your own, right? So it touches on themes that come up in things like the movie Arrival,
right?
Books, right? This, you've made contact with another form of life, another species, or another way of thinking, and how do you communicate when you don't necessarily have a shared language or shared set of experiences or shared set of sensory inputs and so forth. And so, I think that's a fun topic anytime it comes up in sci-fi stories. And so I was excited to see it explored a little bit here.
Nice. Yeah. And that's what we say all the time. Like whether it's science fiction or comics, you can play around with these ideas, the speculative fiction of try to workshop and think through how you communicate with the other, or what would another being look like, or, and the cover of this thing, I don't have a picture of to put up here, but go pause this, go Google Fantastic Four 15 Legacy number 708, and it's an Alex Ross cover with people running in the streets with a huge brain with big eye, like googly eyes, chasing them down the street. So what would you do? A lot of talk with AI and hive minds and what that looks like in our world, and we're playing around with that. And I love that comics can play around with those ideas, and science can play around with those ideas to help us workshop what it would look like if it really did happen, or how would you communicate with other people. And Fantastic Four, when it's done well, they're doing really fun science superhero stuff, but also what does it mean to be in relationship with one another as a family, and to care for one another and to care for others in their neighborhood and world. So yeah, I think they've been around so long, over 700 issues. So yeah, it's hard to create a new Fantastic Four story you haven't heard about. And there's been criticisms about that with Superman, also with X-Men. There's like 3 X-Men stories, them playing baseball, a Magneto story, and a futuristic story where they have to go time travel to fix things. So, how do you do that and think of something new? That's why the Krakoa era was so fun, because it seems like something new and different that Hickman was playing around with. But yeah, Ryan North has done great stuff with this book, and it began like this reboot began with like almost like each episode or each issue was a standalone, like a Twilight Zone mystery, but it's still there's this thread of like what is behind this, what is going on, that they started that way. They didn't start with an event and then you got the fallout. It started out with these little stories that you knew something happened behind the scenes that you were eventually going to get to. So yeah, if you can go out there and get the first volume of Fantastic Four, Ryan North's run on this thing, that's a high recommendation, from us in terms of reading comics. Because if you like sci-fi, you like character development, the way he weaves this story together at the beginning of his run is brilliant.
Yep, and if you need any more sales pitch, there are issues with a Doctor Doom dinosaur.
Oh, that when they go to an alternate universe where the Avengers are literally dinosaurs.
Yeah, all of the sapient beings on the planet are dinosaurs. Yeah, there's Avengers, there's Fantastic Four, there's Doctor Doom. It's your inner 7-year-old will be over the moon.
Doctor Doom as a T-Rex, right?
Yep.
That was Doom,
yeah.
Doomasaur. Yeah, that was it. That was good. Yeah. All right, good. We'll go to the next one. Let's see. Next comic is Daredevil #7. Don't know what volume this is. Maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 different volumes. They reboot all the time, but this is legacy number 669. And I brought it with me. We'll see. And the one I have has Wolverine, and Wolverine's hot right now. Wolverine fighting Daredevil on the cover. And who wouldn't want to see a Daredevil Wolverine fight? And that's pretty much what this entire comic book is. It's just very bloody, big fight. But you'll notice on the cover that Wolverine's eyes are glowing red. Something's not right with this guy. So what happened? Well, Daredevil's storyline is a couple volumes ago, he was in prison. He was separated. He died. He actually went to hell, then was resurrected somehow. I'm not quite sure, but was brought back to this world from hell. And when he came back from hell, he brought with him some demons that tagged along, the 7 deadly sins. Well, when Matt Murdock came back, he ended up becoming a priest and vowed to become a priest, Catholic priest, and oversee this orphanage in Hell's Kitchen in New York. So he's a priest. He's kind of leaned away from his lawyer vocation and is now a priest taking care of kids and orphans off the street. But he's noticing that his friends and some superheroes have attached to them who have been possessed by one of the demons of the 7 deadly sins. So he's fighting these different people with this. So we come to find out in this book, Wolverine is, you would think, the deadly sin that attached itself to Wolverine was wrath. But by the time you get to the end of this book, you think it's wrath, but guess what? It's lust. The deadly sin of lust, and not lust like in the sexual way, but lust for violence. And so Daredevil has to confront this demon of his lust for violence. And I mean, you can't get more violent than Berserker Wolverine, demon possessed, fighting Daredevil in the streets and flipping over buildings. And they're all kind of beat up, but by the end, he beats the demon, and then again you end with Wolverine and Matt Murdock having a drink in the bar, going, "Wow, oof, that was something." And then he's got to figure out what's happening next. And there's a good character that shows up at the last page of this book, who's close to Matt Murdock and close to Daredevil. And so the next issue 8, is going to be like, is she possessed? Is she not possessed? Is she just there for pastoral care or to figure out what's going on? Is a fun book. But I like this run on Daredevil because there has been this sense of like him wrestling with how to be a superhero, but also guilt, but also his Catholic faith and what that means. And the fact that he's walking around in these books with a clerical collar, which I do during the week as well at times. I kind of connect with what he's doing with trying to take care of the orphan, but also fighting demons in the streets. So it's been a fun run. Very, very fun run. And the creative team behind this one, let's see, is Salin Ahmed. And then Aaron Cooter is the artist. The art's been fantastic. Andy, are you reading this book? Have you heard about this book before I mentioned it today?
Yeah, it's a book I've been reading on Marvel Unlimited, but I caught up with the most recent couple issues so that I would know what you were talking about for issue number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been an intriguing storyline so far. Certainly, if you're interested in the intersection of pop culture and religion or theology, this is 101 material here, because Matt Murdock is quoting scripture left and right, praying. The solution to these situations has been prayer more often than not, and so yeah, there's a lot of material just kind of sitting there waiting for you to pick up with. There, it's not there's no subtext here, or you don't have to go deep into the subtext to figure out the religious themes.
And being a Lutheran pastor and someone who wrestles with scripture and preaches scripture and teaches scriptures week in and week out, sometimes I get nervous when people use it in comics and pop culture, because I don't want it to be cringy. I don't want it to I get too controlling over right theology, or I don't want it being portrayed or stereotypes being lifted up. But I feel like it's been used really well in this comic, and it's not used as a way to stereotype or pick on or pull down people who are have as their vocation as a priest or a minister. I feel like they're really wrestling with this, and he's using scripture in appropriate ways, and to give him hope and to lean into what his next move could be, to discern his actions in the world. And I don't know the creative team's religious background. I probably need to deep dive that, but man, if they're not Catholic, if they're not Christian, they definitely have done their research and I think portrayed it in a right way.
Yeah, I think it's a realistic portrayal. It's not one of these the priest is the bad guy or the clueless person or whatever. They're
right.
really giving him some serious consideration to his faith, and taking it, it's earnest about it. It's not sort of ironic or whatever. I do think this issue in particular, it struggles a little bit with, Matt doesn't want to, be a violent person, or recognizes that the violence in his life is at odds with some of the teachings of Jesus, and yet, you got to have punching every so often in your comics, or it's not terribly visually engaging. And so, yeah, I'm not quite sure that totally works. There's definitely lip service page to I shouldn't be as violent as I am, but I'm sure next issue he will find somebody to punch again. But I still appreciate that the effort, even though sometimes they're just the premise of some of these stories just doesn't really allow you to go where the logical conclusion would take you.
Right. Yeah. So he's wrestling with his pacifism or teachings of Jesus, but we're gonna, at least he's named Daredevil. If he's going to fight anything Catholic faith, you can have this idea of fighting demons or exorcisms or fighting with the supernatural, rather than a robber or thief on the street, punching them out. At least you have him punching out demons, kind of thing. And Wolverine having this healing factor. He doesn't feel as guilty, bloodying him up or stabbing him or taking him out, because he knows he's gonna heal. So playing around with a priest wrestling with demons in the supernatural world is kind of in there, a way to do that. So it is. I'll see who the next demon is or the next person possessed and what they go from there. But it's keeping me glued to this book, and I think it's pretty fun. I'm trying to cut down my pull list and be mindful of as rising inflation with comics along with other things. And it was on the chopping list. And I was like, I'll catch up the trade later or read it on Marvel Unlimited or something like that. But then when I saw Wolverine on the cover with glowing eyes, I was like, you got me. I'm back in. I'm going to at least see what this one is. And then the last page to see, okay, you got me with that last page. We'll see maybe I'll give you one more chance to see what happens with legacy number 670. But I will say that I was really disappointed when they had Daredevil 666. They just kind of went along with the storyline. They didn't really address he is wrestling with demons in this thing. That's fine. Right. He's wrestling with the 7 deadly sins. But I think, man, they missed an opportunity with going Daredevil 666. But maybe that was just embedded in the storyline. I didn't want to be too on the nose. But, I was looking forward to 666. But oh well. Cool. All right, let's move on to the next one. This one's fun, Moon Man, and this is when sometimes in the comic world, they'll bring someone who's popular, a movie director, an actor, an actress, or somebody in the world that the people really know to come write for a comic to lure them into this medium. And we have a pretty high profile name that's on this comic from, I think is Image number one.
Yeah.
So it's Image book. Andy, tell us about Moon Man.
Yeah, so it's funny because that was not what attracted me to the comic. And I will admit, so it's Kid Cudi, is that right? How you say that?
Kid Cudi.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm an old white man enough to not even be confident in that I'm pronouncing his name right.
I remember my oldest daughter Hannah like turned me on to a couple of his songs. I'm like, oh, cool. So I recognize the name. Not my regular playlist, but I like hip hop. I like R&B. So she say, hey, Dad, I think you like this song. I was like, I do. And then like a year later, I'm like, Hannah, look, that guy you told me about, he's writing a comic.
Yeah. Yeah, so I will admit I was trying to break out of the Marvel zombie mode a little bit and try to make sure that I'm not just talking about Marvel comics because they hardly need the promotion.
Right.
And so I was looking, what else is out lately? What's new? What are people talking about? And my wife and I really got into the show For All Mankind on on Apple TV. Are you familiar with that show at all, Will?
I've heard about it. Is this the alternate timeline that Russia made it to the moon first?
Well, actually, now I forget if they made it. Yeah, they made it first, and just the space race was much more competitive. There's like a single event in the '60s that something happened in Russia, and the thesis is that in our world that kind of took the pedal off or the foot off the gas pedal for the Russian space program, and so it wasn't as competitive. And so after we got to the moon, there was sort of like, well, what else do we do? There's no competition. There's nobody to beat to anywhere else. So our space program sort of flagged a little bit. But in this world, the Russian space race persists, and so by
what
the '80s,
platform is that on, Andy? What
it's
platform
on
is
Apple
that on?
TV.
Okay.
There are 4 seasons out now. It's 1 decade per season, so they kind of jump 10 years in between seasons, and so we've gotten moon bases and Martian bases and so forth because the pressure to advance space science is there. So anyway, so I was into that show and I thought, oh, maybe this book will have some, not exactly that. I mean, it's obviously not a tie-in or anything like that, but maybe there'll be some flavor there. It's gotten me on kind of more of a space program kick. And I was surprised after reading it. I was like, oh, actually, it's a little bit more of a Fantastic Four comic than I was expecting. And it's a little bit of a mystery, right? The premise. So I don't know how much to get into, but there is the hints of or there's a background of a space program kind of similar to what we've got now, right? Where there are these private companies that are engaged in space travel in addition to NASA and other national or international space agencies. And the main character, the Moon Man of the title, is an astronaut for one of these private companies that has a space program. In addition to it's called Janus, but it's an Amazon SpaceX kind of analog because they're in all kinds of businesses, right? And that they've got their fingers in everything, including space. And so we come to find out that he was on some kind of mission to the moon, and they didn't land on the moon because something went wrong, but we don't really know what. There were 7 minutes that are erased, missing from the tapes, missing from the broadcast, and over the course of issue 1, you never really find out what happened during those 7 minutes. You just know that there's a hint that something went wrong, and there are hints that this guy Ramon came back and has some kind of superpowers as a result. Still, I think he's still figuring it out, and so we as the readers are still trying to figure it out. There's some kind of Superman-ish. Maybe he can fly or jump really high. Maybe he can, he's extra strong. There's maybe some like energy component to it or telekinesis component to it. There are different kind of things there's hinting at here and there, and so it's unclear exactly what he can do. But he's come back to Earth, and he's kind of reconnecting with his family. They had them quarantined for a long time afterwards because they didn't know what exactly happened, and so they want to make sure they didn't come back with moon rabies or whatever. So
right.
So yeah, so he's now, you know, reconnecting with his family after a long time, and you know, they have misgivings about his connection to this company, but also you know, it's that kind of love-hate relationship of we know that this company is doing bad things and exploiting its workers, and you know, kind of taking over everything, but also they employ people, and if they didn't exist, there, you know, there wouldn't be as many jobs in this area, or they, you know, they got rid of all the other jobs, right? They outcompeted all the other jobs, so they are the jobs. So your choices are, you know, employment here, or no employment kind of deal. So you know, there's a lot of strong feelings around all that, and so he's engaging with. There's some protesting. There's some different things, and yeah, it does. I'll admit it didn't quite get as far into the story as I maybe would have liked for a first issue, especially because it then took 3 months for the second issue to come out. So I hope this isn't another, what was that, Kevin Smith? Was it a Kevin Smith Daredevil comic or something that we're still waiting for the last issue of? And you know, there was that Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk thing that took like 3 years to come out or whatever it was. You know, so this, oh yeah, Damon, you're right. That wasn't Kevin Smith. That was Damon Lindelof. The history of
these celebrities that have other jobs and things to do, is like, let's get like 6 scripts in the can before you announce it and publish it, before you know, they're trying to do other things. I'm sure he's on tour, he's rapping, he's got other things, but if he loves comics, then let's get like 5 scripts in before we announce release. But you know, that's how it goes.
So you know, caveat emptor, be aware that, you know, that's the situation. There are 2 issues out right now that came out 3 months apart, so who knows what the schedule will be going forward, but hopefully there is a final issue at some point, and it isn't just half a story. But yeah, it's still intriguing, and there, you know, and there are positive examples too, right? Iman Vellani seems to be hitting her deadlines on her Miss Marvel books. Taboo from Black Eyed Peas has co-written some Spider-Man comics. Those have come out and finished a miniseries. So there are success stories here as well. So hopefully this will follow that model. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting idea. You know, there's definitely a mystery to kind of unravel and unpack, and I hope that goes somewhere satisfying. And yeah, if you like your sci-fi and you want it maybe not with a veneer of existing superhero properties, or if you want, there's also there was a single that he put out, and I think there's a promise of a full album. So if you like your sci-fi comics with a concept album to go with it, there you go.
Yeah, they've marketed this. It has its own website. It has its own Spotify playlist. He's connecting it with like other things he does too, and kind of the music, R&B, rap world. Yeah, and he co-wrote this with Kyle Higgins, which is another kind of big name in comics who've done other things. And then the art, Marco Lacati, I think is how you say it. I'm not quite sure. The art's really good, really kinetic and action based. I will say the first issue I liked, then we waited a long time for issue 2. I read issue 2 and I kind of forgot what was going on. And then issue 2 wasn't as smooth. I was trying to familiar myself with what's going on, but the coloring, the art is fantastic. I do think I'm going to just keep the first 2 issues and then wait for the trade to read it all the way through. Curious to see what they do. But yeah, this concept of going to space, something happening mysterious and coming back with something supernatural, nothing new in comics. Fantastic Four. And as I'm reading 1960s comics with another podcasting friend, that Fantastic Four is kind of copying other things too. So it's not it's in the water. But even I sent like Andy a script a few years back of like an idea that I had. It's like, hey, read over this. What do you think? And it's about a surfer astronaut who goes to a comet and gets hit by a gravity wave and gets gravity powers. And I was like, oh, as I was reading Moon Man, I was like, man, he's kind of did what I had, but also understanding that's not an original idea. That's not like far-fetched. So anyway, maybe one day I'll do my own take on this, go to space, get powers, come back kind of thing, and play around with it. But yeah, I thought it was fun. I think it's cool when you find out that people in pop culture or popular celebrities are into comics is a lot of fun. DMC, for a non-DMC, is a huge comic book fan. I met him at NC Comic Con a few years back, and he did a graphic novel. And man, if you would have told, middle school Will that one day he'll meet DMC and get him to sign your comic and call you Chill Will at the same time, not too shabby. That was not bad at all.
It's a nice day.
Not a bad day. Cool. All right. So we'll hit this other one. Last comic is Helen of Windhorn, and I'll show the cover here. Fantastic cover. This is a creative team that I loved from a previous Eisner Award-winning team, Tom King and Bilquis Evely. She's a European artist. Man, the art is so good. They wrote Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which they're going to base the new DC movie Supergirl off of. I loved that comic. A lot of dynamic art, fantastic art. And then Tom King is also a novelist, so there's a lot of text, a lot of narration, a lot of words. If you don't like comics with a lot of words, don't read Tom King comics. But I like his style. I like what he does. That book is one of my favorite comic stories of the last decade. And them now, they're on it's a Dark Horse comic, Helen of Windhorn. And here is a comic. Andy, have you read this or checked this out or know about this book at all?
I checked it out, but because we were going to be talking about it, I wanted to know what we were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Were you able to read that first issue?
Yeah, so I read the first issue. I don't know if you are familiar with The Unwritten by Mike Carey. I think it was a Vertigo book way back in the day. Got kind of vibes of that from the art and the setup. Definitely not my usual kind of thing. Not something I would have picked up otherwise. But it was interesting. And that Supergirl book I will confess I have not read yet, but that has been in my to read queue. So I will maybe bump that up.
Well, after the Supergirl book, I was like, man, have I not heard of Evely before then, and looked at some stuff, and that's like, I wonder what she's going to do next. And so when they announced that King and Evely are going to be together again for another book that's not like really superhero but more fantasy based, mystery based, I was like, yep, sign me up. I can't wait. I will follow her, whatever she does from here on out. I will buy or at least check out in some form or another. And so the premise for this comic is that it almost sets up like the Titanic movie, where this guy who's going to write a book is interviewing somebody who's in their 80s or 90s, reflecting back of like this incident or a family or something that happened in the 1930s. So it's set in the 1930s. So she's telling this story and reflecting back, and then you see the art and the timepiece of the 1930s. And so Helen of Windhorn, Helen is a 16-year-old whose father, who was a pulp fiction writer, fantasy writer, wrote about monsters and swords and fantasy, almost like Conan the Barbarian, and but her father has died, and so she has to go back to the Windhorn estate where what her grandfather owns. And there's this kind of caretaker who's been hired. Her name is Lilith Appleton, who's there to kind of educate and mentor and take care of Helen now that her father's been passed away. And she has to go to this huge estate, almost like the Biltmore house in North Carolina. So but since she's 16-year-old, 1930s, there's this prim and proper ways that women are supposed to act and girls are supposed to act. Well, she's a little loose with her tongue and drinks a lot and gets drunk all the time. Obviously, she's grieving the death of her dad. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on. Well, at the end of this book, there's this reveal that her grandfather shows up. There's this mystery garden and kills this huge wolf-like monster with a huge sword. And you're like, is she hallucinating, seeing this because she's been drinking? Or is this something that really happened? Issue 2 picks up where she's like, hey, what the hell's going on? And they're like, oh, watch your tongue, young lady. That's not the way to speak. But she's like, no, what is going on? And her granddad is kind of like very kind of gruff, not saying a few things, just eating like a turkey leg and like grumbling and then walks off. And then she goes out in the garden another time, wants to get out of the house, and notices that he's feeding like this little mythical creature that she thought was only in her father's books. And she's like, wait, that's real? That was like a creature that my dad dreamt up in one of his books. And there's still you don't know what's going on. By the end of issue 2, finally the grandfather's like, okay, I need to go on this adventure to this mountain. You want to come with me? She's like, yeah. So that's kind of how that ends. But there's a lot of subtext, a lot of text from Lilith Appleton's point of view, talking to this author about what this family is. So there's this mystery of, is it real? Is it not? Is it fantasy? It's just in the book. Pretty cool. I love it. It's not normally in my wheelhouse. I'm a big superhero and sci-fi guy, but this is kind of fantasy timepiece. Wizard of Oz meets some reviews. Wizard of Oz meets Titanic. So I'm curious what's going to happen with this. And again, it'll probably be another comic that I'll collect single issues and then collect the graphic novel so I can put that pretty thing on my shelf. Andy, what are your thoughts on this book? Not being, we're big superhero guys. We love these teams, superhero teams, but here's something a little different.
Yeah. It didn't grab me. There's a common, criticism of these sort of maybe more indie books of, the first issue, you get the premise, like the final page twist is sort of the premise that was described in the solicits. And so you kind of feel like you already knew what you were getting into. And so there's a little bit of that. So yeah, I think I want to know a little bit more, would have liked to have seen that first issue, maybe go a little bit further, so maybe I'll have to check out issue 2. Didn't, it's a setting and a character that, is not immediately relatable.
Right.
So that didn't exactly grip me. I could see maybe my daughter getting into this, that trope of, the girl that doesn't conform to the world's rules. That's I think aimed more squarely at the teenage young adult female audience, and so she might find something worthwhile there. Yeah, it's definitely not. It didn't feel like something, despite the fact that I got some unwritten vibes from it, and that was a book that I enjoyed for how it kind of played with the intersection of fiction and fact, and when does fantasy bleed into reality. But it's definitely it's its own thing. It's a very different kind of thing, and not something I've read much of. So yeah, I appreciate it for that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I was so captivated by Supergirl and then Evely's art, and I was like, I'll see what happens next. I'll stick with this. I do the trope of like the mystery, is it real or not? The fantasy timepiece of what this world was like is kind of there, and then it's you got to have the supernatural monster, but Helen of Windhorn with a big swords and dynamic or weird family. We'll see how it kind of plays off. King has a way of telling a mystery and not revealing what's really going on till the final issue and really final couple pages. So I'm worried how long it'll stream. I wonder how it will read as single issues if I remember, a month from now what's going on, have to reorient myself with the story. But I think as a collective graphic novel, I'll be very interested. And I showed my daughter too, my oldest, who's a senior in college. She's a ferocious reader of novels and loves great TV shows. And every now and then I'll hand her a graphic novel and she'll, oh, that was cool. And I showed her the art in this one and kind of the main character. She's like, ooh, I really like that. So I was like, okay, cool. Maybe one day for a holiday or birthday, I'll get her the graphic novel and say, go for it, kind of thing. Selfishly, so I can have it on my shelf when she leaves it in her room and goes off to college, that kind of thing. So well, those are the comics we've done. Anything else, Andy, you want to chime in with?
I was just thinking the other thing it occurred to me as we're chatting, if you liked the Werewolf by Night Disney Plus special, I think you would get along with this comic. Not again, not plot wise necessarily, but Elsa Bloodstone is not a million miles away from Helen of Windhorn character wise, and just the kind of general vibe, the sort of old school, old time feel. I think fans of that would find something worthwhile in this book too.
Yeah, I agree. Good pull there. That's good. And so there's the comics we're talking about and what we're geeking out on. There's a lot of stuff in our pull list and we're reading each and every week. I have a little short on YouTube that I do where I kind of talk about what was in my pull box and kind of the pull of the week kind of thing. And so, check those out. And if you're a big comic book fan and there's a series that we're not talking about or that you're collecting that you think we should be checking out and talking about, then let us know in the comments, DM us, let us know what you're reading, what you're geeking out in this medium of storytelling. Man, I love comics. We have Free Comic Book Day coming out right around the corner in May 4th. Star Wars Day is also Free Comic Book Day. So go by your local comic book stores and there'll be sharing free comics for all ages, kids and adults. And then most of the time, this is a time when the big two and the other comic book companies are trying to promote what's coming up next this summer. So I think Gail Simone has an X-Men story that she's combining with on Free Comic Book Day that you can grab for free and see if you like it and like her style and go from there. Andy, is there a comic book store in your neighborhood that you go to for Free Comic Book Day or check out?
Yeah, we go New Dimension Comics. They have a couple of locations in the Pittsburgh area.
Cool.
Their Cranberry location is the closest one to us.
Nice. Yeah, Ultimate Comics is my comic store, and they have a number of locations and big events and cookouts and creators and comic book creators who are there signing, and it's just a really cool day to go out and geek out if you love comics. May 4th this year is going to be a lot of fun. So cool. Thanks, y'all.
If you don't have a comic book store near you, local libraries sometimes get the free comics and give them away at the library too. So
good idea. Good idea. Yeah, go grab some comics, y'all. Support the medium. It's good. They're not going away. For thousands of years, humans have created art with storytelling, whether it's cave drawings or iconography or stained glass. We've been doing graphic novels a long time. So I don't think comics are going away. There may be big industries that crash and burn by trying to chase the money or the dollar or popularity, but people are always going to connect art with words and try to tell stories. So I have no fear that comics are going away. Just kind of what it does and who's in charge of it may shift and change and reform. So thanks, everyone. We appreciate it. Let us know what you're reading, and we'll see you next time. Andy, take care, man. See you soon.
See you. Take care.